My name is Martina Leforce. I'm here with Berea Kids Eat, and I'm reporting in from the superintendent's office currently. She's been kind enough to share her spaces with us while we've been really making a home in the school system unexpectedly. So today I'll be talking about some of the work that we've been doing here in what we call the COVID-19 Nutrition Response Program with Berea Community School. It really is a connection point between all the partners that we've been working with, and so I will be highlighting what that looks like also. I'm also recognizing and thanking everyone who's already doing this work in the communities where you maybe already are, or the communities that are already just doing a fantastic job. I think there's so much to learn from each other. We have really benefited here from working directly with the Winchester School District, and then over in Clark County, and then also with the Madison County School District, to just kind of our food district managers checking in every other day to support each other and share where we're at. So what we're doing here is unique to Berea because a program is going to look different for every community that it's in. So today, though, I'll be talking about specifically here in Berea, Kentucky, with Berea Kids Eat and what we're doing with our partners, and just some different resources that might be out there. And I'm really looking forward to possibly hearing about some of the community responses that have been happening throughout the region. So thanks for joining today. Let's see if I can figure, I'm also on a Mac, so that's a new thing for me. Oh, here we go. So Berea, Kentucky, just to place us of where we're at, I think that a lot of us know where Berea is. In location too, we are connected to, we're considered a transitional county, but we are connected to a number of what would be considered distressed counties also. So we have a number of families that are actually coming in from Rockcastle and Estill County to come to our meal program site, because we're actually we're closer to them than some of their sites are even in their counties. And also we were able to get our program launched a little bit faster than some counties were. So they sort of were getting in the habit. And several families have reported their partners work in the factories that are located here. And so they're able to pick up meals after work and actually get those to the county, which is great. So we're not serving specifically just Berea families, as I just shared, but just an idea for where Berea is at. 87% of the kids before we had the school closures were eating their breakfast and lunch at school, which meant that when schools were closing suddenly, that was going to have a dramatic impact, not just on everyone's household food budget, but also on the number of times they were going to have to go to a grocery store. So our efforts were, we started on March, well, whatever 2.5 weeks ago was, if you can tell me the date. I think we're all losing track now at this point, but we're at day 14 of actually having meal service. But we didn't quite recognize exactly what we were going to be dealing with, because at the time our response was very strategic, but also very reactive. And we're still learning as we go, as more information is coming out about this pandemic. But our goal was immediately to meet that meal gap and also reduce the number of times that families were going to have to go to a grocery store. A number of our families that we work with here in the community reached out to our family resource coordinators, and so many people were worried about how are they going to pay their mortgage, but then also the 45% of households that are renters were immediately concerned about how they were going to pay rent, because every day we were having more and more closures, with manufacturing and service industry being one of the strongest workplaces that we have in the community. Most people are working for those industries, and the school system is a number one employer too. There was concerns about, well, what are we going to do? So when we also were looking at trying to create as many win-wins for the community, having an emergency food response program, if it was done well, would also provide the opportunity for dining services staff to stay on full-time, both at Berea College Dining Services and at the community school. And then also a number of our classified staff at the community school, we learned, still have contract hours that they have to complete. And so luckily this is able to help fulfill some of those requirements currently. So Berea Kids Eat, really quickly, what we are is a strategic initiative of Berea College. We're a program of Grow Appalachia, and we've been in operation since 2016. When we started our work, it was specifically with the USDA Summer Food Service Program. And then over the years, we were able to add in an after-school nutrition program too, which made our operations then year-round. So what that looks like then is partnering with sites throughout the entire community. We have over 50 partners that we're working with at 26 different sites to make that happen. Most of our work is powered specifically by Berea College student interns and labor students during the summer months. And then during the after school times, it's mostly our partners at the library and the community school that are making that program work. And in the past couple of years, we've really wanted to reach a little bit deeper into our food systems work. And so we've been focusing also on community garden outreach work and farmers market support. So the closest thing to go into about what our program has typically looked like by the numbers, and these are kind of startling to me when I compare them to our numbers now. So last year, we served almost 17,000 meals during the summer, and almost a little over 12,500 after school meals during the summer. And this is just an idea of what our meals look like. We follow USDA standards. We have what we call refrigerator shelf-stable food that we're mostly using, and we focus on trying to meet the needs of kosher families, Muslim, and then also vegetarian, and we avoid nut allergies. So if you see any, like that's actually sun nut butter that's in the picture there. Yeah, so that's typically what our program looks like. But then when we got the news that the schools were going to be closing, the USDA Summer Food Service Program was the one program that was the best positioned to serve as an emergency response program, because already SFSP sponsors were allowed to tap into these funds during NTI days, so non-traditional instruction days, and school holidays too. So it was a much easier shift for the USDA to actually provide waivers to change a lot of the regulations for these programs. So we're going to be looking at specifically then is this, again, Summer Food Service Program. So these are federally funded programs. They're USDA programs. They're state administered. In the state of Kentucky, that's the Kentucky Department of Education that does the administration of this program. And then we have sponsors. So that's, in our case, that's Berea College, and the Berea Kids Eat program then administers that sponsorship. And we work with sites throughout the community. We're responsible for all the paperwork, all the auditing, all the monitoring, and then also fronting the costs of the meals until the USDA reimburses those. So again, now we're at the point, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds with this, but since the waiver was created by the USDA recently, several other waivers have actually come into existence too. So now after school programs and also the National School Lunch Program can provide emergency nutrition response too. But the Summer Food Service Program has the most amount of flexibilities in that, and that's why the Kentucky Department of Education is really wanting people to focus, organizations to focus on summer food service as their program that they administer through. So now I'm going to go specifically into what Berea Kids Eat COVID-19 response has looked like. We're going to be looking at where we are now and then working backwards a little bit to how we actually got to where we are. I'm going to talk about mobilizing partnerships. A really big piece of what I'm going to be focusing on today is service with safety. I've been really excited to have been part of a number of summits, virtual summits, and conference calls with No Kid Hungry, as well as our state level, our CDC level. There's been a lot of exciting work of people mobilizing very quickly. What there has not been has been a discussion on this is not the same thing as a hurricane or a tornado. This is a pandemic and it's a virus, which means that every single person who's involved in this work is an asset, but we're also a liability, because every time that we have a point of contact, we have a risk of exposure. And so that's really shaped dramatically the work that we're doing. And I think that we've developed, I don't know if I would call them best practices yet, but they have been heavily informed and influenced by the CDC as well as Kentucky COVID response. I'll be talking a little bit about leveraging some of our local resources, and then really looking forward to hearing again about the work that others are doing. So the picture that we're looking at here, by the way, is the ground floor of where we're distributing the meals from, and I hope that it'll make more sense as we go on. Again, so this is the visual to your left, is the visual that we were provided with as our initial guidance from the USDA and FEMA on how to be food safe. You'll notice that it's food safety before, during, and after a power outage, and then also after a flood. So there was no information existing at that time, and we still haven't had any official releases yet of what to do in the event of a pandemic. So we had to really follow every day the governor's office and having regular check-ins with our health department. But we were really being relied upon to take that information and adapt it and evolve it to actually shape our program efforts. So the first thing that we had to do was consider those who were at risk. So that includes, of course, anyone who's over 60 years old, the immunocompromised, and for us, those with young children who didn't have consistent childcare. We saw that we had two different risk categories. One is outreach providers. Those are the folks like us, like the people who are on the ground doing the work, distributing meals. But then we also had the outreach audience, and I would consider that families who are participating with our program by coming to our sites and picking up meals. These are all points of contact, and we're all at risk. So the question then that we had to look at when we were defining the structure of our program is, how does this affect who we serve and how we serve? So again, starting to where we're at now, and then working our way backwards. On your right, you'll see week 2 to present. That's a current flyer that we have that we post every day for families to know how our program's operating, and because having daily communications is critical, and I'll go into that later. It's just critical to be communicating with families and then with our partners on how we're doing this. So right now what our program looks like is we are preparing meals at 2 different kitchens, and I'll show you those soon. Those kitchens then have no contact with one another, and the food is being delivered separately to one distribution point, which is our school gymnasium. That made the most sense because it was close to our car pickup line, and we had immediate outdoor access of the gymnasium to the car pickup line. Every school or nonprofit or church is going to have its own system that makes the most sense. We needed indoor covering to protect everything, and then we needed to have an outdoor access point. It's for all children ages 18 and under. The children do not have to be Berea Community School students, and that was a really important thing that we had to share with people. And also, because of a current waiver now, children do not have to be present in order to have the meals picked up. Parents and guardians can actually sign a roster, and it's a really simple form. It's just their name and how many kids they're picking up for, because we don't really take the names of children. But, you know, if we have, the point of this program is, again, we are trying to reduce the amount of contact between people. So if we can have one person representing a household and coming to the site to pick up a meal for 6 children, then that's ideal, because that's automatically 7 more contact points that we've been able to reduce. Also, we have a number of families that don't have access to transportation. We are not utilizing delivery with bus systems as other school districts are doing, and I'll go into why very soon on that. However, we do recognize that we have a number of high-risk families. Those are the ones who do not have access to transportation, and we're considering grandparents who raised grandchildren to be high risk also, because our goal is to keep them as safe as possible. So they have access to being able to call into our family resource coordinator, and through a Google form, we are able to actually determine who is high need and most at risk, and make sure to get those meals delivered on their doorsteps with no contact. Now, how this is different from even a week and a half ago. When we first got started with this, you know, we were like, it's time to mobilize every partner. And I will go into all those partners and who they are really soon. But we were looking at the churches, the libraries, any place that we had already served meals at. We were looking at the transportation system here at the community school. What if we could, you know, load up these buses with meals and go into neighborhoods and people could know where to find us, and then they could pick up meals there. It all seemed like a really good idea at the time, because the point was to meet a need, right? The point is to be of service, service first. And then we started to get more and more news and more updates and more closures and more restrictions coming from our governor's office. And, you know, every day we're meeting with the superintendents and all the leaders who are making this program work. And we're putting our heads together and realizing this might not make sense. And so I actually rode the bus one day, the last day that we operated the bus, and it was just red flag after red flag for us. Hands touching buses, no gloves, not being able to maintain a 6-foot distance. Suddenly there'd be 30 kids congregating around the bus. There was no way to control it. And really what we came down to is, it was a really hard choice for us to make this, but the more that we got out into the community, the more we could bring this virus into the community. We're fortunate that we haven't had a positive case or even a self-quarantine at this point from anyone who's intimately directed with our program. But really, it's a numbers game at that point, and it's not a game that we really wanted to play with. So we decided to scale back and to control as many variables as we possibly could. And so I'm hoping that this is going to help provide a little bit more context for the structure of our program now. So where we're at now, these numbers become outdated. So I'm just going to walk you through my very messy whiteboard, if that's okay. This is a community whiteboard that we keep in the main floor of where we distribute the meals from, because really a huge morale booster is people seeing those numbers every day, and working from a positive place of accomplishment instead of a fear of deficit. So we are currently, where we're at is where we're on day 14. Meals are actually being served right now. By the end of the day today, I expect that we will have served 31,500 meals about. And that's going to bring in about $86,000 of USDA funding directly into the community to help meet this immediate need, which is really exciting. We operate with 2 different kitchens. And so that's Berea College Dining Services, Sodexo. They've been our partners from the very beginning. But then we realized that Berea College Dining might not be able to keep up with the need. And also the Berea Community School Dining Services, they don't get a furlough. So when they don't work, they're not being paid. Now, hopefully with unemployment protections, that's going to be shifting with that being expanded. But a number of these families, or these staff members, also wanted to continue working. They don't just go to their jobs every day because it's a paycheck. These food service workers and directors, they care about these students, and they wanted to have an opportunity to stay engaged also. So when we started weighing out the need for even having a backup kitchen for staff employment and also being able to keep up with the need, we were able to work with the community school district to actually add them on as a vendor. And so now we have 2 different vendors that we're working with, and we're really, really excited about that. We also have broken down to having 2 different teams of people who are distributing the meals. The reason that we decided to do that was because, first of all, this is emotionally challenging and physically demanding work, and it's also an emotionally challenging time. So we really thought it was important that on-the-ground staff would have opportunities to be with their families, as well as to really just catch their breaths. Every day we're getting different news, and sometimes that can be really hard to emotionally process, you know, for myself included. So that having 2 teams also involves having 2 team leaders. So it was me working directly with our family resource coordinator, Diane Smith, to get us both on the same page, so that then we're both co-leading teams, and we're not interacting with one another's teams, again, because that's helping to reduce the points of contact. If anyone has to go through self-quarantine, then we still have a backup team to work with. And we're really working on a minimal amount of staff. Our goals are to be able to distribute 3,500 meals per meal service day, with 8 to 9 people on the floor, and then 3 people per kitchen, and then also 1 bus driver. And so far we're able to make that happen, which is really exciting. We also have mask makers. We have 4 people who are designated to make we call them face garments, and I'll show you what those look like in a bit. When we first started this work, we realized that we wouldn't be able to have access to the protective gear that we were going to need, meaning the term we all know now. I didn't know this term until 3 weeks ago, the N95 mask. Everyone's wondering, well, why can't we have more masks made? And the complicated part isn't just the making of them, it's because they're under patent, and that patent hasn't been released yet by the company. And so it's not just a matter of making these masks, it's that we really do have a shortage for now. So we had the idea 3 weeks ago, what if we made cloth masks? And people kind of thought we were a little bit crazy. So it wasn't anything that we were publicizing at the time. And then the health department started sending out that recommendation, and now it's expanded to the CDC. We don't call them surgical masks because they're not. We don't call them really much other than facial garments. And the goal of those garments is that it's keeping us from doing all these weird facial things that we do on a regular basis. I joke around and I call mine the muzzle because I have some habits like touching my face, rubbing my hair is one. And then also every time we pick up a cell phone, that's another issue too. And some of us are nail biters. Hopefully we'll all stop that pretty soon. But it's kind of a dramatic time right now, so it might be hard for some of us. So what these garments do is they help us to stop doing those things, and also they contain some of our, what we bring outward also. So we have 4 designated mask makers, and again, we're working with our state agency and the USDA. But also I want to highlight some of the other partners that are making this work possible too right now. So we have our meal transport team, and so that's our school bus drivers. They're using their own funds from the community school to actually transport these meals, and they're using a bus that I lovingly call Doris now, named after our food service lead person over at the Berea College Dining Services. So bus 29 Doris is delivering our meals every day. And the exciting part is that the seats were already out of that bus because we've been planning on developing a mobile meal distribution bus for the summer anyway. So we were just lucky to have that already emptied out. We have a really amazing meal prep team. They're those behind the scenes folks who have always been the heart and soul, I think, of a program like this. But our kitchen staff is incredible. They were prepared for this because they already have to follow strict sanitation protocols anyway. So we really leaned in on them to actually teach us how to be more sanitary, which I really appreciate. We have a sanitation and hygiene crew, and so that's our school custodial workers. Every day they're coming in before and after we're finished with our work, and they're sanitizing every surface. And when I say every surface, they're coming in with machines that mop. They're using sanitation on refrigerators, on handles, on tables. They're vacuuming. We've shut down most of the school, and also we've reduced access. Only people who are directly involved in this program have access to the school building now. And that includes teachers, and that was really hard for the schools to do that. But the teachers don't feel locked out. They recognize that this is about protecting the students. And so having that trust between these partners has been incredible. Our meal distributors, those are the people, again, who are on the ground. Those are our classified staff at the community school, and then also a handful of people, including Chris McKenzie from Appalachia, who are actually coming in to join our team regularly too. We have our Berea College and Berea Community School administrators. So that's our administrative committee, my vice president, who's Terry Thompson. We had incredible guidance from our legal counsel here at the college to really make sure that we were doing this properly to protect everybody. So that includes that we just want to make sure that we're not doing anything that's going to financially, legally, or even physically harm anyone. And then, of course, we have our Berea Community School administrators. Oh, I don't know. Sorry, we're in the middle of service right now. We're looking for Diane. So we have here at the Berea Community School, of course, we have our superintendent, Dr. Hatchett, working with our school principals, with our family resource coordinators. it was really all of us having to sit down in a room together. We can't meet together anymore because there's so many of us and we're having to do call-ins now. But really shaped the structure of what the program was going to be like. And then, of course, we're really fortunate to be working with Partners for Education in this process. Berea Community School is one of the recipients of the full service grants. And then, of course, we have our AmeriCorps work, and a lot of different programs are being administered through PFE. And so working with Jenny Hobson, for example, who is with the Community Full Service Grant, she's been pivotal in being that organizer, working virtually, remotely from home to actually coordinate our teams, to send out email correspondence, to get volunteer asks developed, like water drop-offs because we needed bottled water and we needed masks to be made. Those simple things like that, they really add up very quickly. And to be able to have a point person who you know you can trust to get that work done so that I don't have to think about it has been amazing. And Partners for Education has just really stepped in there and helped us meet those gaps. We also have our, what I call neighborhood champions. So we have a number of summer food service meal sites that we didn't feel comfortable with sending the buses to anymore. But we have families that live in those neighborhoods who we've been working with for years, and we can trust them. And we can also trust that they are going to follow protocols like wearing gloves and masks and using hand sanitizer. So we have 3 women who are actually picking up meals that they are dropping off at the doorsteps in the neighborhoods that they live in, such as our housing authority neighborhoods. So if we can have one person coming to pick up enough meals for 65 families, that's 65 families that did not have to come here to get those meals. So again, that's just critical. Let's see. And then of course, I want to thank our food service suppliers. That's our Cisco's, our GFS's, everyone who's just, you know, we do have supply issues. That's just the case right now. Sometimes we can't get milk in, and luckily we have a USDA federal level and state level that understands that. And so sometimes we have to change what our meals look like to follow that. So I do want to go into a little bit then of what our protocols look like. Again, I don't want to come off as being an authority on this. I don't work for the CDC. I don't work for the health department. However, I'm really grateful that we have a health department that's helped inform what we're doing. I'm really grateful that we have a governor's office that's working closely with the CDC to get us daily information and updates, because that's really been a critical piece of what we're doing. So on your left, you'll see a CDC infographic, I guess you would call this, on how to stop the spread of germs. These are things that like people thought they knew, and then we realized that we didn't do them on a regular basis. Like something as simple as how to wash your hands. We started teaching a hand washing class at our summer food service sites last year with kiddos, but I had to start with my staff, my student staff, because I was just like, okay, everyone, let's go wash our hands and see what this looks like. I was a little horrified because people were washing their hands for like 5 seconds. Some people don't use soap. We didn't even understand the science of how hand washing works, which is mostly about friction. So we really had to do classes on how to wash your hands. And so when we come in every day, the first thing that we do is we wash our hands together. But our basic protocols, and I'm just going to go through them one by one, and I hope this isn't too tedious for you. I just think this is the most important thing that I can talk about today, and I appreciate your patience in it. Because for us, it's not about service first anymore. It's actually about safety first, and about being responsible to the community and to our families that we go home to every day. So daily updating on COVID-19 via the CDC and the governor's office. This is something that we as program leaders are doing every day. And also we're having 3 times a week check-ins with a group call that's citywide, so that we can have this information as in real time as possible. Again, we're working with teams that are rotating every week with different leaders with a very minimal number of people. What we're looking at doing every day, but what it looks like that we do every day is as soon as people come in, we do a health check which is where team leaders are just checking in and asking something as simple as, how do you feel today? Is anyone in your home feeling not well today? Any fevers? And if anyone reports even a fever or a cough or a migraine even, we send them home because that's what we have to do. And, you know, if it means that we have to operate on a smaller staff that day, then that's what we have to responsibly do. We haven't had anything like that happen yet. But again, you know, the curve is just now really going to be hitting its peak over the next 2 weeks. On Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, we have group emails and calls. So when it's my week to be a team leader, it's my responsibility to check in with these people who are going to be with us doing this work directly. And part of that is also including those updates that we think that they need and also doing health checks. We are doing daily briefings, or as I said, with community health responders. Those are now every other day because it was getting a little much for everybody. The big thing about our kitchens, we have no cross-contamination, which means that no food, only food at the Berea Community School is ever in that school, like that kitchen. Nothing from Berea College ever goes to Berea Community. Nothing from Berea Community ever goes to Berea College. We keep that food entirely separate. No one is really allowed to go in those kitchens, and that includes even the staff that are working directly with this program here, except for the team leaders, and that includes myself and Diane Smith. And then also, we are sanitizing all of the trays, and I'll show you what those look like. Everything that we use has to go through a dishwasher and get to a certain temperature because this virus doesn't like heat. Also, again, we are doing gloves, cloth masks at all times. We're operating with 6 to 12 foot distancing. I'll show you what that looks like. I think it'll be better to see a picture of that. No personal items are allowed in food prep or distribution areas, and that includes cell phones. That was actually the most important thing that we could rule out because that's the #1 transmitter right now of germs in general, because we're touching our hands, smart screens, putting it to our faces. And so even if we have people sanitizing them as soon as they come into the school, which they are, we still don't want to see any cell phones at the ground level. However, we do recognize that people still have families that they need to look after and tasks that they need to do, and that includes me. So we have hourly sanitation breaks where every hour that we're on the floor, we stop what we're doing and we start sanitizing everything. The tables, our hands, we start with our hands. We put on fresh gloves. We clean the tables, we clean the carts, and then we use that as a time to also take care of our personal needs, like taking phone calls and also drinking water, because a lot of people weren't being hydrated enough, unfortunately. And I was the worst for that, it turned out. I'm drinking more now. Don't worry, Candace. And then also temperature readings on food are critical. There are a number of summer food service programs that have been dropping food off to doors. I love that. That's awesome if that's working for them. COVID doesn't really care about things like salmonella, though. I mean, just because, you know, our #1 enemy right now is COVID, we have salmonella issues, but then also food spoilage issues. So when we're operating this program, we also have to think about food safety because that's critical. So if I was going to be dropping off meals at a doorstep, and I don't know if they're home or not, and there's perishable items such as milk, sandwiches, things like that, well, that food should only be out at room temperature for 2 hours based on our regulations. So that the moment that we take that food out of a refrigerator, the clock is ticking down from there, 2 hours working backwards. I personally didn't feel safe or like it was responsible to do this, and then professionally I didn't feel like it was also to drop it off. Now that's not judging any way what another program's doing, because maybe they have a way of doing it to where they know the families are home or they have a cooler system. We just didn't have that capacity, so I didn't feel like it was responsible to move in that direction. So having said that, we also do hourly readings on our refrigerators and our freezers, and we mark those temperatures down, and then we set a timer The team leader will set a timer on their cell phone, because we allow them to have their cell phones. And when that timer goes off, that's our cue that we need to make sure that the food has been only out for a period of 1 hour to 2 hours. So we're constantly having to shift when we're bringing food from the refrigerators out to the floor and then distributing it. I feel like I'm overlooking one, but I have the bar in front of me. But anyway, doesn't matter. You can read it. And so it's funny because again, these are some of the best practices that the CDC has been sharing with us, and that's what we're using to gauge where we're at. For example, I was using my work computer for the work I was doing. However, I wasn't able to easily sanitize it because it had so many buttons. And so I made a request to my director and associate director of asking for a different device that I could use, which they're helping me get, because every time I couldn't guarantee that I was able to fully sanitize my computer board. Those are the kinds of things that we're having to think about constantly. At my own home, this is something that we had to do with our health department, is training. We had people come in and train our staff how to have a sanitary home, which sounded so weird because it's like this judgment, are you not clean enough? And it turned out that I wasn't, because I had magnets all over my refrigerator, because I had bowls of fruit all over my kitchen counter, because I didn't take my shoes off the minute I came home. But really simple things, like when I go home, I actually have to remove clothing, put it in the washing machine, and take a shower and sanitize my phone as soon as I get home. So these are now daily practices that all of our staff are incorporating in, and that's the importance of working with the same teams regularly and not bringing in volunteers, because we all, even though we haven't signed a legal contract, we've made a commitment to one another and to our families to incorporate these changes into our households. And it was really hard to actually tell some of our staff people who were over a certain age and who were immunocompromised and who didn't have consistent childcare that this actually might not be the time for you to work with us, because it's not safe for you and it's not safe for the families that we're serving. And those are hard conversations to have. However, I think that having them with compassion and understanding, and also support for one another, even when we had to cancel our bus routes, the bus drivers, they were really bummed about it because they were so proud of that work. But then in reflection, they realized that this wasn't just something that's going to end in a week or two. We have to be thinking about the longer term, because even now, what we thought could be maybe a 2-week program, well, now we're looking at going as long as at least until the end of April. Well, it could be mid-May. We don't know yet. So we really have to think about those sorts of things. Here's our hand-sewn masks. I won't name the folks who've been making them because I don't have their permission to do that. But there's me on the right wearing one of those masks. And they get a little hot, and I can't wear my glasses with them because it fogs it up. But it really is making a big difference. We've had over 280 masks made and donated at this point. And I'm really excited to share too that we were the first group that was really actually making these in the community and using them. And behind the scenes, we helped mobilize all of our churches that we were partnering with. They wanted to serve meals with us, but we were like, well, we just don't think that's a good time for that. But does your sewing group want to make these masks? And they have been cranking them out like crazy, which is really, really, really cool. They're even making masks for children now, which is really great. Again, these aren't protecting us necessarily, but our goal is to protect the people around us as much as we can. So this is our 2 kitchens, 2 meal providers. So Doris, who Bus 29 is so lovingly named after now, she doesn't know this yet, but I'm going to tell her. She is the one who's really leading their kitchen crew. And then Berea Community School District, I didn't share the pictures of their staff because I didn't have permission to do that, but I plan on sharing a lot about them really soon. They've been making meals also. And on the right, you'll notice these wooden carts that these are on. So we started using these bread trays, these plastic bread trays, because it can be wheeled in and out of a refrigerator, a walk-in, very easily. And that one row, that one stack of meals is actually, we're fitting 25 meals per bread tray. So we have basically that's 250 meals right there in that compact area. And we don't have to do lots of heavy lifting to get those there because we also have to protect people's backs. And these trays can be sanitized in the dishwasher really well, but we had a heck of a time finding carts because no one was shipping out, or they were running out of them really quickly. So we were able to tap into Professor Mark Mahoney here at Berea College. I sent him a need. And again, it's about mobilizing people. I don't feel like we ask for favors too often, but we're not asking for favors right now. We're asking for help. And so I sent him a need, and I said, I need this. Can you make this? And within an hour, he had actually made 12 of these for us. No, 6 of them. I think more are on the way. But yeah, so that's where the food, and what we do is we add in extras. Our produce we add in later, and then also our chips we add in later. That's the inside of bus 29. Someday we hope that she has a beautiful picnic tables and beautiful paint and everything. Right now she's lovely because we can sanitize it every day. Our bus driver actually mops this every single day before and after with bleach solution. She sanitizes all the walls, everything, and it's a big job, but we think it's really critical and necessary. So these are meals that are being brought from Berea College Dining, Sodexo, and they're actually being brought into our distribution point at the community school. You'll notice here social distancing. We're very proud of that. We set up the gymnasium. We had to borrow fold-out. We didn't have any fold-out tables even. So we got fold-out tables from a number of churches and from our facilities management crew. And the point of the setup is that there's at least 6 feet of distance between the people who are putting the meals together. And we have different stations to do this at, and those are actually 12 to 20 feet apart. And we actually have lines marked off with tape to remind people to stay in their lane, literally, and to not get in each other's way. It was a big adjustment to not do high fives, even elbow bumps, all that. We don't do it now because it's just not a good idea to. And we actually used hula hoops one day. We made these funny little devices where we were able to put on hula hoops that were pretty big and show how we move around. And we were showing just that visual of how much we were bumping into each other. And then we were able to translate that to an education tool for students through to teach them through Facebook, like what social distancing should look like. This is our exterior of the building. So this is the exterior of the gymnasium. And again, I'm showing the tables that we have set up. We do not hand anything to families at all. We don't go to their vehicles anymore. We used to do that. We used to put the food in their trunks. That's not a really good idea to do that. For example, when a car door, just thinking about it, we actually worked with a professor at the college who worked out some kinks. She works over in the science department with biology. And I was like, so here's how we're doing this, and here's how we're doing this. And she was like, do you understand how air physics work? And I said, no, because I'm not a physicist or a scientist. And what she showed was that when we have a car window that comes down, we have 2 different areas of air that are meeting up with each other. So if someone has coughed in their car in the past 10 minutes, what's going to happen is those molecules are floating around in that car. When they roll down their window and we hand a meal out, that air will rush out and it's going to go right towards us. So we really can't do that anymore. Now, is this completely scientifically proven? I haven't heard it from the CDC, so I'm not going to claim that, but it just seems like a good idea for us. So what we do is we actually have the meals placed on tables. And then it's hard to visualize this maybe, but we don't do hand-to-hand contact at all. This photo is actually outdated because now we have 2 layers of tables between our food distributor and the person picking up meals. And, you know, at first we were worried that families would feel like we weren't there for them or that we were being impersonal. Families have been so receptive to how safe we're being because they know that we care because we're there. We don't have to hug to show we care. And what I'm hoping that we're going to get from this is a realization that maybe hugging was being overused in the first place. For example, if someone doesn't ask me or invite me in to hug them, that's probably not a good idea to do that anyway. This is what our gymnasium looks like. You're going to notice lots of people wearing gloves and masks, although Emmy on the left-hand corner is not yet, but she is now. And what our room looks like, the distance that we keep from each other. We don't shift that holds steady consistently. And it took us intentionally setting up the room in order to make that happen. And it didn't happen overnight, but it did happen within a period of 4 days because we had to problem solve and we had to figure out these issues. Oop, let's see, where's my arrow? Oh, there we go, Mac, okay. And then here's our crew from the outside. This is every team member that's involved who works on the ground. That's our selfie. Selfies look a little different now. And also we've been really fortunate to work with our police department. Their community school resource officers have been helping to distribute meals and then also to provide a layer of a feeling of safety for our families because people are right now just feeling a little bit safer with her being there. And then, yeah, I guess that we're wrapping right on up with my side of things. So just giving a heads up to the people who are helping Laura and Candace navigate this. I did want to share in the final slide some links to some resources that we've been using. I didn't really feel like it made sense to go in step by step of all the waivers that we've had, because since we've started this, and when I say waivers, the USDA continues to release waivers to make our program more flexible with summer food service. Currently, right now, we're up to waiver number 19. So that means that every day our flexibilities keep on shifting. So I'm not going to go through what those look like at all. But I did want to share at least the links for how we're keeping up to date with that information. No Kid Hungry has been an incredible resource for us and on the national level. But also for us, it's our state Kentucky Department of Education. Their websites are up to date. And then also, again, the only websites that we're directing to for best practices are Kentucky COVID-19 and the CDC. That is the directive of our leaders, our mayor, our superintendents, all those folks. We're all on the same page, but that's where we're going to for our information. So I'm really looking forward to any questions anyone might have. And then I really am excited to hear what other people are doing also.